first time anyone heard the whisper, it was already too late. The sound drifted through the abandoned lodge like a breath from a locked room, steady and patient, as if it had been waiting for someone to listen. Floors settled, pipes groaned, and beneath it all was the soft pulse of something alive. Elias' heart didn't believe the stories at first. Places didn't think, and buildings didn't remember. But on the night he arrived, the cold air hit him with a heaviness that felt almost personal. The boards under his boots moaned in a way that made him pause and glance back, as if the hallway behind him had just swallowed its own voice. He kept walking. He should not have. The whisper followed. Elias stood in the grand foyer of the old Northcrest Lodge, the kind of place once built for expensive retreats and now left to sag under its own forgotten weight. The air tasted stale, thickened by a bitter draft that seemed to seep from the dark corners near the ceiling. He set his bag down carefully, more out of instinct than respect, as if loud movement might wake something best left asleep. The lodge had been closed for more than 30 years. His employer wanted a structural report and evaluation. Elias wanted a quiet weekend and a paycheck. He should have paid closer attention to the reoccurring prickle along the back of his neck. He walked the perimeter of the foyer, touching the railings, the wall paneling, the framed photographs of guests long dead. Every time his fingers brushed the wood, he felt a faint tremor push back. Not vibration, not temperature, something closer to a pulse. When he reached the staircase, he hesitated. The steps bent inward as if hundreds of unseen feet had worn them down. The shadows above curled in on themselves like smoke with no fire. He heard the whisper again. This time it sounded closer, almost brushing the shell of his ear. Elias found the generator room in the basement. The flashlight beam shook, though his hand felt steady. The deeper he moved into the lower level, the more the air tightened around his ribs, as if the lodge wanted to compress him into its walls. He tried to laugh at the feeling, but the sound died before reaching his throat. The switchboard sparked when he restored the power. Lights flickered along the hallway, revealing peeling wallpaper and a faint water stain shaped like a face. He blinked hard and looked again. The stain remained, but the face had shifted somehow, as if its mouth had stretched in a silent cry. He backed away, lifting the flashlight toward the shadows. A cold hush swept through the room. Not a breeze, more like a held breath he was sharing with something else. As he turned to leave, he caught sight of footprints across the basement floor. They were small, child-sized, and smeared in a dark, grainy substance like old soot. They led toward a locked maintenance door he knew he had not opened. The whisper floated out from behind it. This time it formed a single, stretched word he could almost understand. Stay. By nightfall, the storm had rolled in. Rain hammered the windows so hard the glass trembled. Elias sat in the main lounge beside the dead fireplace, reviewing his notes, though the ink kept smudging from the sweat on his palms. He kept noticing movement at the edge of his vision. A painting on the far wall seemed to tilt, then straighten, as if someone behind it breathed unevenly. He closed his notebook and rose to inspect the room. Chairs sat in odd angles he didn't remember leaving them in. A dusty piano against the wall hummed faintly, even though no keys had been touched. When he stepped closer, a soft thump sounded under the lid. Something inside had shifted. He lifted the cover slowly. The strings were vibrating, though the room was silent. A single string snapped, cutting through the air like a hiss. He stumbled back. The lights flickered, dimmed, then steadied again. Behind him, the hallway stretched longer than before, as if the lodge had exhaled and expanded around him. He listened, heart drumming. The whisper rose once more, threaded with the kind of excitement only a hunter feels when its prey begins to tire. He tried to sleep in one of the upstairs guest rooms. The mattress sagged like a hollowed stomach. The sheets smelled of damp earth, though the fabric was dry. Elias left the lamp on and watched its weak glow pool across the floorboards. Every few minutes the light wavered, bending as if something moved between it and the bulb. His eyes drifted half shut when a soft thud came from inside the closet. Not loud, but definite. He sat up fast, pulse hammering, and stared at the door. It stood slightly ajar now, though he was certain he had closed it fully. Another thud, a faint dragging, the kind of sound a small hand might make while feeling its way across a surface it could not see. He approached the closet with slow, shallow breaths. When he pushed the door open, the air inside chilled at least 10 degrees. The clothes hangers rattled with no breeze. High on the back wall, written in a dripping black streak, were the words, "You came back." Elias staggered away. He had never been here before. At least, he thought he hadn't. The moment the idea surfaced, the whisper returned, echoing inside his mind like an answer he did not want. Elias wandered the hallways in a daze. Memories flickered at the edges of his vision, a child's laughter, a woman calling his name, a fall down a staircase he did not remember climbing. Each flash vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving him trembling. He reached the ballroom, a vast and empty space with a mirrored wall that stretched from floor to ceiling. His reflection looked pale and unsteady. When he lifted his hand, the reflection hesitated before copying him. He stepped closer. The glass rippled like water. In the reflection behind him, the lodge appeared brighter, lively, bustling with people dressed for an evening long past. Their faces were blurred, their movements jittery, like an old film reel catching and skipping. One figure stood perfectly still among them, a child with soot-blackened feet. The child lifted its hand and pointed at him. Elias spun around, but the ballroom was empty. When he faced the mirror again, the child was closer, its eyes two hollow voids where the reflection should be. The whisper swelled, louder now, blooming inside the space behind his ribs. He felt the truth closing in on him like a cold grip. The lodge remembered him. Thunder shook the roof. Elias stumbled through the corridors as the whisper grew into a distorted chorus. Each step felt heavier, as if the floors were drawing him back. He reached the locked maintenance door in the basement and knew he had to open it, though fear clawed at him. The key trembled in his hand. When the lock clicked, a rush of cold air spilled out. Inside was a narrow stairwell leading deeper underground. The walls were lined with old scorch marks. The soot on the steps matched the footprints he had seen earlier. He descended until he reached a chamber carved from stone. In the center lay a burnt cradle. The sight hit him with a sudden wave of memory, so sharp it twisted his breath. A fire, a child's cry, his own hands breaking through smoke. He sank to his knees as the truth returned in fragments he had buried for decades. The lodge had not been abandoned after an accident. It had been abandoned after his accident. The whisper circled him, warm and familiar now. Not a threat, a welcome. The lights snapped out. Darkness folded around him. Something small placed its hand on his shoulder. Rescuers found the lodge empty 2 days later. Elias's car sat outside, keys still in the ignition, driver's side door open as if he had stepped out only for a moment. Inside, the floors were untouched, no footprints, no notebook, no trace of anyone living or dead. The basement door, though sealed for decades, stood wide open. No one could agree on what happened. Some think he fled into the storm. Others believe he never arrived at all. A few insist they heard something inside the building while searching, something faint, like a child's voice repeating a single word, "Stay." What really happened in Northcrest Lodge is still argued in late-night conversations and shadowed corners. Most people avoid going near it.